Thanks everybody for tuning in to today's show, and I can't wait to share with you emerging research that shows fat cells can act as a buffer against chronic inflammation. That means your body can actually swell fat cells or create new ones if it senses an inflammatory environment. Why this is such powerful research is it begins to help us understand why some people become fat loss resistant. That means that they can diet, they can exercise, and they simply don't get the results that other people are getting. We work with many of those clients in our practice. We understand where they're coming from, and that's why I keep talking about going beyond the dogma of eating less and exercising more. That will work for a good amount of people who are eating excess and who are not moving their body at all. But we want to help the people as well who have been eating well and they have been moving their body and they still can't lose the weight. There are underlying root causes, and today I'm going to share with you one more, and essentially it's inflammation acting as a protective shield. So the fat cells are actually starting to congregate around the organs. That is some of the newer research. It says that the body may be holding on to fat to protect these vital organs. Some of that can actually show up as what is called visceral body fat. That means body fat that is in and around the organs themselves. So basically on the human body, we have the fat you can pinch. That's subcutaneous body fat. Then there's a layer of muscle like your abdominal wall. And then below that are your organs. Think about the organs that are there. You have your pancreas, right? You've got your stomach, you've got your liver, your gallbladder. They're all there. And so what do? Well, the body, when it senses systemic-based inflammation especially, it can start to swell the fat cells that are there or create new ones as what seems to be, this is what's emerging, a protective shield for those organs. And here's why. When the body senses inflammation, it looks at it as potentially tissue damage risk or increased oxidative stress, elevated immune-based activity, hormonal instability, or increased toxin exposure. Well, what your body does is it uses fat literally in your brain and your body to store away inflammatory compounds, cytokines. It could be anything from excess hormones, heavy metals. All of those can be stuck inside of your fat, and here's why. If they're stuck in your fat, they're not in your bloodstream then, and so it's less risk to the rest of the body. Now, our body doesn't know that we're trying to stay lean and that we're trying to lose the belly fat or whatever it might be. All your body knows is that it needs to do this in order to protect you. So again, the body never messes up. It is too amazing of an architecture and beyond our wildest comprehension as to how it truly works at the deepest levels. Now, of course, we have millions of studies that we have the gratitude to be able to read and understand, but still there are things that we do not truly know in science that are still beginning to emerge. And that's a great thing. It's always trying to better our best even as practitioners. So here's what we need to look at. I'm going to give you a couple things as to why this inflammation essentially blocks fat loss, because it creates that inflammation. That inflammation response then increases insulin resistance. This is one of the biggest places. This is really important because we're all trying to eat better. We're trying to keep our blood sugar levels balanced, all of those things. If you have high levels of inflammation, that's why we're talking about the omega-3 and inflammation test. We talk about that a lot because if you have systemically high levels of inflammation, it's going to be so much harder for you to balance your blood sugar than somebody else, even if you eat the same level of carbohydrates or lower levels, whatever it is. So that's why it's so important, because your body does not properly take the glucose that's in your bloodstream and move it to the liver or empty storage sites in the muscle. And since it's not able to do that well, you have higher levels of circulating blood sugar, which then leads to more fat storage. That's it. And poor fat burning, right? Poor lipolysis. So it's a really important point. And I can't stress that enough, because until we fix that, fat loss is going to be extremely difficult. So that's one of the first places that we dig in, improving cell membrane dynamics so that those cells are now open to pulling in the glucose. All right, so that's one of the main ones. The second one is leptin disruption. I've talked about before, leptin and ghrelin, right? Leptin's the hormone that signals fullness and metabolic rate, and that it's time to burn body fat, right? Why is this important? Because if we're not getting higher levels of leptin, then the body's like, wow, I'm still hungry, I'm not satisfied, I can't burn body fat, right? I don't have enough. I'm still in a survival-based state. So here's the result: increased hunger. If your leptin levels are off, you're going to have increased hunger, slower metabolism, lower calorie burn compared to just someone else, even at the same weight, same height, and increased fat storage. The third issue with inflammation really acting as this buffer is what it stores. So the fat cells, you might have the same number of fat cells as someone else, but with high levels of inflammation, your fat cells swell. So I just gave this analogy, I believe, last week. So every Wednesday, I do a Wellness and Weight Loss Wednesday show. And it was last week or the week before, and I'll link that up. So you can just go to stephencabral.com/3673, all the weight loss and wellness shows. So think of your fat cells as basically a flat water balloon, right? Or just a flat balloon. And you can hook it up to the hose and you can fill it with water. Well, that's what your fat cells do. They inflate, they grow, they literally swell. And when they swell, what are they holding? Well, sometimes it's literally just fat. It's excess calories that your body's holding onto for stored energy. But oftentimes it is inflammatory-based cytokines from a overactive immune system. It is environmental toxins such as heavy metals or microplastics or environmental estrogens. It could be excess fatty acids, which we alluded to a little bit earlier, especially maybe there's just an excess of arachidonic acid, of omega-6s, and that's starting to throw off the cell membrane dynamics, and that's causing some insulin-based resistance. Or it could be what's called lipid peroxide byproducts, and these are a lot of the inflammatory products of the fats themselves that are then being tucked away. But this is also important because this affects your brain, it affects your muscles, it affects your liver, it affects your heart, and it affects your body body's ability to regulate hormone. So this is a multifactorial problem. Why this is important? Because conventional medicine likes to compartmentalize everything. If you have something wrong with your neurology or brain, we're going to send you to a neuro-based doctor or a vascular-based doctor. We've got an endocrinologist for your thyroid levels. We've got a GI-based doctor for gut-based issues. We've got a urologist. Like, everybody has their own lane, but they're not looking at the body systemically. The only way to get well is to look at your body as an interconnected unit. Like, that's really it. So you have many parts, but it forms one unit. So if you try to pull all of them apart, you're never going to get to the underlying root cause. That's ultimately what we need to fix. Okay, so one more I want to share with you is that when we'll call it inflammatory shielding, when the body fat begins to shield you from this type of inflammation, you're going to see these symptoms. Blood sugar regulation, we talked about that, but you're going to have higher levels of fasting glucose. That means fasting, when you wake up in the morning, blood sugar is above a 95. I know conventional medicine waits until it's above a 126, but truthfully, when it's above a 95, just waking on a daily basis, that is blood sugar-based regulation issues. All right, the other one is gut-driven inflammation. If you're constantly feeling chronically bloated or have gas or constipation or loose stool or food sensitivities, this can be another factor, that your body is chronically inflamed. It's showing you that through all of the bloating. Not a lot of people do environmental toxicity testing. I wish they did. More people do the minerals and metals test to look for heavy metals, which is fantastic, and I definitely recommend that. But if your environmental load goes up and you're exposed to things such as exhaust fumes and whatever it might be in your job, then that's an issue as well. And so again, well, it's not the end of the world. I work with a lot of firefighters and individuals as well. First thing we try to do is get everybody to kind of chip in or raise it through a charity through the city to get an infrared sauna for the firehouse. Then we're typically using the universal binder and we're using the daily detox support to help those firefighters. And then they're doing a functional medicine detox every 6 weeks instead of every 12 because it's a special use case. So anyway, there's a lot that you can do. I don't want to get in the weeds here today, but everything can be fixed. Truly, everything can be fixed. Okay, so the next one I want to look at for these inflammatory-based triggers that can cause excess fat is higher levels of cortisol and dysregulated stress. And so this dysregulated stress, it increases the cortisol and the inflammatory components of cortisol. Cortisol is actually anti-inflammatory at normal levels, but inflammatory when it becomes excessive because it also begins to dysregulate estrogen. And so the estrogen also accumulates as additional fat, right? So not an ideal thing. But maybe what's worse is that it reduces sleep quality. And when you reduce sleep quality, you don't quiet the inflammatory storm, and it elevates your blood sugar the next morning. So we need to get our 7 to 9 hours of real sleep. So if you track your sleep, not in bed hours, but actual sleep hours, I want that above 7 hours as your minimum per night. And that goes a long way. All right, so those are some of the things that you might be looking for. A couple of things that could be adding to it that you're not even aware of is that when you do go on starvation diets, when you go on deprivation diets, which last longer than 3 to 4 weeks of just really reduced calories, what does it do? It signals to your body that it's in a starvation-based state, increases stress hormones. It can decrease thyroid. It can create estrogen dominance and lower your body's ability to burn calories or a good amount of calories on a daily basis, which is even worse because then if you ever come off that diet, you're going to gain weight much more easily. So we don't like that. Another thing that I've seen with my clients is excess cardio. When you do too much cardio, you increase inflammatory oxidative stress in the body, which can lead to then the increased inflammation, which can lead to then the fat cells. Now, do I like cardio? Absolutely. I think it's very healthy to do. So I'm talking about overdoing it, overdoing any exercise, truthfully, overdoing it when you're on a starvation-based diet. Really important. All right, a couple other things that I want to share and that we're going to move through is that if you want to be able to reverse this inflammatory shielding, which leads to increased adipose tissue or fat cells, especially around the belly, here's what we want to do. First things first, stabilize blood sugar. Now, it might have an underlying root cause that we just spoke about, which might be elevated levels of stress, elevated levels of too much exercise, under eating, and poor sleep. That could be leading to the unstable blood sugar. So we always have to look at the underlying root cause, but we have to stabilize those blood sugar levels. One of the most important things that you can do, but remember, just stabilizing just saying we want to stabilize blood sugar levels is not enough. We have to say, why are my blood sugar levels unstable? I'm not eating processed foods. You're not drinking fruit juice. You're not drinking a lot of alcohol. Like, what is going on? Okay, here's what's going on. Elevated levels of stress, poor sleep, increased cortisol in the evening. Those might be your underlying reasons, okay? Next is improve your gut barrier. So if you have digestive issues, run the Candida metabolic and vitamins test or begin the CBO protocol by Equilife. Whatever fits you, whatever your practitioner, your integrative health practitioner recommends, but we need to fix that gut barrier. If not, we have inflammation, a swarm of inflammation moving all around the body, since we know that 70 to 80% of our immune system surrounds our 26 feet of gut, all the intestines, called the gut-associated lymphoid tissue. Important that we fix the gut. All right. Third one, support our detoxification pathways. Do a quarterly functional medicine detox. Do sweat on a near daily basis. Eat the foods that you need, like the cruciferous veggies, in order to improve liver detoxification. Even things such as ginger tea can help with the kidneys and excretion of toxins as well. All right, the last one I want to share is that sleep. And I know we talked about blood sugar first, but we need to do, just like we need to find the underlying root cause of imbalanced blood sugar, we need to find the underlying root cause of poor sleep. It's critical with burning body fat. I know that makes no sense because you're like, well, no, the more I'm up and the more I'm burning, the more active I am, the more I'm going to burn calories. True, but that's not what we're talking about here, right? We're talking about the body's already shut down. It's in survival-based mode. This is a totally different story now. And if your body isn't sleeping at the same time it's in survival mode, it's completely stressed. So we need to do what we need to do in order to get that body to sleep. You might be taking some magnesium, like full spectrum magnesium at dinner. It might be using adrenal soothe at dinner. It might be using 2 droppers of liquid melatonin before bed. Whatever we need to do, we're going to get to bed. We're going to fall asleep using the 3-2-1 sleep method. I've got a ton of shows on sleep as well. They're all free. You can find them at stephencabral.com/podcast. Just scroll through the images at the top. You'll find the sleep-based category. But we need to get good quality sleep. All right, I could go over so many more things, but I'm going to keep it at that for today because sometimes it becomes overwhelming, right? All the things that we could do. If you ever want just a good first place to start, easy one is just to run your first lab with us. We literally give everybody 50% off their first lab. Might not be the right fit for you, excuse me, but if it is, just go to stephencabral.com/firstlab. 50% off your first lab if you've never run a functional medicine at-home lab test. We would love to be able to share with you this amazing field of really powerful research that helps people rebalance their body at the underlying root cause level. Have an amazing day, everybody. Do feel free to share the show with anyone you believe could serve. Take care.